You have to listen to this. Listen to this. Listen to this.
What happens when a country doesn't vaccinate? Well, let's take Taiwan as an example, because you might remember early on in the pandemic, they were praised for their low case numbers, and that was because they locked down and they closed their borders very successfully. But what they didn't do was vaccinate. Less than 1% of the population there is vaccinated. And look at what's happened there now as the virus has taken hold. Still relatively low infection rates compared with other parts of the world, but still.
But still what? Hello beautiful people, I'm Justin. Thanks for joining us today. We like to make videos for you to share with you what our life's been like since we decided to get up, get out, and get gone. In today's video, we're going to talk to you about the recent upsurge of COVID-19 cases here in Taiwan. Mostly we want to share some of our opinions and feelings about how this case is not only being managed by the Taiwanese government, but also how the rest of the world has been talking about this recent upsurge. For those of you who don't know, Leah and I have been living here in Taiwan for, well, 6 months now. And before that, we were separated for 8 months because of COVID-19. We were quite excited to reunite here in Taiwan because Taiwan was doing such a great job of managing this virus. In fact, they were leaders in how to protect its citizens against the spread of COVID-19. And with its proximity to China, that was a feat that should have garnered more international recognition. For the most part, we've been living a rather unfettered life. We have had very little restrictions on our movement. We have been able to work, go to entertainment spots, go out for dining. It basically is only required of us to wear a mask when in public, to wear a mask on public transportation. Currently, Taiwan is in a level 3 COVID-19 alert. Schools are closed, so we are working from home. When you go outside, you must wear a mask at all times. So before you could go out, walk on the street. If you gathered in, let's say, a restaurant prior to dining, you would need to wear your mask upon entry. Public transportation, you always had to wear a mask, but now it's full-time mask wearing. But the reason we're in this level 3 alert is because the domestic cases have skyrocketed. There's been exponential growth recently, and it's kind of caused a lot of concern. And while the number of cases that have caused us to go into a level 3 alert numerically aren't that large, especially when compared to other countries, it's the fact that what Taiwan had been doing for so long all of a sudden seemed to not be working. Or perhaps the protocols put in place weren't being met. One thing that we keep hearing is a lot of criticism of how under-inoculated Taiwan is. When a country like Taiwan, so close to China, was ahead of the game, ahead of so many other countries in so many ways, in December of 2019, when they heard rumors, based on rumors alone, they had already started screening incoming flights from China. And they recognized that there was a potential for a global pandemic and started implementing protocols that would kind of stop it in its tracks, contain it, and not let it spread throughout the island. They did a fantastic job. As I said before, we've been living a great, nearly COVID-free life since we moved here nearly 6 months ago. I'm getting kind of angered by the rhetoric that's being put around this topic. This has become even more politicized than necessary, not so much because it is a government that is issuing the protocols, but how other countries are talking about it. Countries that didn't even heed the warnings or accept the assistance that Taiwan was offering back in January of 2020. When you have media talking about how desperate Taiwan is for vaccinations, clearly every media has its own agenda. And it may not be as salacious as some might think, or it might suggest by the word choice and the language being used. It may be nothing more than certain media are kind of trying to hawk a particular brand of vaccine, even if it were as something as simple as a sales pitch. The way people talk about this, I think, is having an influence on how people are responding and reacting here. When we went into the level 3 alert, it was quick and it was fast, and people seemed to do their best to maintain a certain level of duty, to comply because it was in the best interest of everyone. And now, this whole time we've been here for 6 months, we've not heard much speak of the need for vaccination. And Taiwan is not an island that's full of anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Taiwan has been working on their own vaccination, and it's coming out soon, I think around July. So they've seen the need for vaccination because they're developing their own. However, all of a sudden, it seems there's this intensity of criticism and almost like a shaming and a condescension from these media sources talking about how under-inoculated Taiwan is and how it ranks globally as being the worst, just the worst. We are starting to take offense to how this situation has been framed. Yes, there has been an uptick in cases, and yes, the contact tracing that has proven to be so successful is now being scrutinized, but it's slightly problematic because of the sensitive nature of some of these clusters and their origins. And that's how the contact tracing works. For the most part, all of the cases that have come into Taiwan have been caught during the quarantine stage. And any kind of domestic transmission, well, that gets nipped in the bud pretty quickly because of the contact tracing. And right now, proven a little more challenging, but that does not mean it's ineffective. Again, this is where we get frustrated and I get kind of angry about it. I mean, I'm not even a citizen here. Granted, we're here legally, we have work permits, we're working, we pay taxes, we contribute to the economy, et cetera, et cetera. So outside of our own personal safety, I feel like we have a little bit of a stake in how the world looks at this. When I was living in Vietnam, a lot of criticism came from the outside on how the government was taking care of it. In fact, you can go to this video up here and see what I'm talking about. But why is it all of a sudden that we need to start talking about vaccinations? And again, not anti-vaxxers here. That's not what we're saying. Something else to consider, and this is a point that a YouTuber by the name of Prazi pointed out. He lived both in China and in Taiwan. We live in Taiwan, and Taiwan is an independent nation governed by itself. It is a democracy, and China just can't let that slide. They insist that it is a lost child at sea that needs to come home. When Taiwan has looked for assistance in this most recent outbreak, it seems that China is flexing its bully arm and really making it difficult for Taiwan to get some things done that it wants to get done. Taiwan constantly lives under the threat of China creating economic blockades throughout the world against Taiwan. It makes this situation even more politicized than it once was. And I think it's also making it more polarizing. People are starting to heavily critique the government here and how they've managed this situation. But for a full year, Taiwan pulled together and fought back COVID, and it was not an issue. And then yes, something happened. Can you say that it's the fault of the systems put in place by the CECC? By the way, the CECC, it's got to be one of the coolest names for any kind of government agency that is managing the health of its citizens. Central Epidemic Command Center. I just like to say it. Central Epidemic Command Center. Taiwanese should be proud. They've done a great job. And this criticism that's befallen them of late is just something I hate to see, and it actually angers me. Even though I'm not a citizen of this country, I am quite grateful. Leah's quite grateful. We're both grateful for being here because we had nowhere else to go. And we've been living a great life here. We're so happy here in Taiwan. Even currently, we're not overly concerned. We're cautious, but I don't think that we should panic. I trust that Taiwan is doing the best that it can because it has an island to take care of. It's only 23 million people here, and it's quite isolated in that regard, and it has this big bully kicking sand in its face all the time, and it's really, really tough for it to not find itself either neglected on the world stage, overlooked in general, or just completely ignored. And that's quite unfortunate because I think what they've done has been amazing. And we are happy to continue to stay here and see this thing through. Taiwan is producing its own vaccination, so it doesn't necessarily need to depend on this faux outreach from China that keeps ending up in the headlines of saying, hey, we're going to help you out. We look forward to seeing this situation come to a close sooner rather than later. Until then, Leah likes to leave all of you with one question. When was the last time you did something for the first time? Remember, it's never too late to get up, get out, and get gone.